Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics live on Trust TV, your go-to platform for everything politics, policy, and governance. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us. Tonight on the program, we focus on two critical issues. One from Edo State that has got the entire country talking yet again about the quality, the credibility, and the integrity of our electoral processes. Are we making progress? Have we taken a couple of steps backward just to deliver on the will of the people? As you can imagine, it was supposedly a do-or-die affair going by the rhetoric in the build-up to the September 21st elections. However, as INEC announces the APC's Monday Okpebolo as the winner of the elections, the PDP and other political stakeholders within and outside of Edo have very critical analysis to make and to pronounce about the quality of the elections. It is safe to say that the next battleground will be the Nigerian judiciary, where you expect the political actors in this particular elections to take forth their claims and counterclaims regarding the outcome of the elections. Rejections from the PDP, condemnation from the Labour Party, as many have described over the past 24 hours in the aftermath of that election. So, to set the stage for tonight's conversation, let's listen to some of the reactions from some of the political actors in the Edo governorship election.
My dear good people of Edo State, in the last few months, the various political parties have embarked on very rigorous campaigns to sell their respective candidates for the office of governor to the people of Edo State, in an exercise which came to a climax yesterday. The attractive thing about democracy is the power it bestows on the people to choose who governs them. Therefore, when this power is blatantly seized from the people, it is not just a tragedy, but a travesty of democracy. Regrettably, the outcome of the September 21st governorship election appears to have daunted the spirit of many Edo people who feel powerless in the face of the brute force of the institutions that are supposed to protect them. It is therefore understandable that many people feel sad and aggrieved. But in the midst of this despair, I'm urging all my fellow Edo citizens to maintain calm and not resort to violence and the destruction of property in spite of this provocation.
Particularly thank the good people of Edo State who defied the rains, the intimidation, the threats of violence, harassment, arrests, and financial inducements to cast their votes for us overwhelmingly last Saturday, 21st September 2024. You are the true heroes of our democracy, and your sacrifices for a better Edo State will never be forgotten. My aspiration was not born out of the love for power, but a genuine desire to serve the people and create a pathway to prosperity for all in Edo State.
I'm here to develop Edo. I want to transform Edo the way it should be. I want to tell you that I'm starting from where Adam Soshomole stopped, and I want to let you also know that I would like to emulate what Akpabio has done in Akwa Ibom State. Edo will receive a new transformation. By the grace of God, Edo is back again. Thank you. Thank you very
much. Right, the thoughts of Governor Obaseki, the PDP candidate Aso Ighodalo, and of course the eventual winner of the election, Monday Okpebolo, who of course is from the APC there. Some of their thoughts about the conduct of the elections. You can tell PDP is not particularly happy about the conduct of the election. You can say the same thing about the Labour Party, but of course even election observers have weighed in to point out some of the critical issues that have come to light in the aftermath of the election. So let's speak to some of those issues We have with us in the studio Patience Nwadishi. She's from the Center for Transparency, Advocacy, and of course we have Emmanuel Njoku from the Connected Development who will be joining the conversation virtually. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you again.
Good evening. My name is Faith.
Faith, I beg your pardon. Okay, let's start this way. Your 2 cents on what happened over the weekend, September 21st in Edo.
Well, it's actually a mixed bag of things that happened. One, I will just start prior to the election, because we were there on ground, and you had a situation whereby the political class unnecessarily heated up the environment. But we kept saying that if you have followed the elections in Edo State, you will find out that every time the politicians want to make things look as if it's not going to happen, just to keep people away from coming. But on election day, you just may record 1 or 2 pockets of violence, and that was what happened. One other thing that happened on the election day was that nature itself didn't allow people to come out. There was heavy downpour of rain, but as soon as the voting continued, after a while the rain stopped and it was sunny all over. The early hours of that election was quite peaceful. We saw people trickling out even before the rain started to vote. I was out on the election day, going from polling unit to polling unit. I crisscrossed about 5 local government areas within Edo South Senatorial District. So we went there and saw one. The beavers worked very well. Beavers took between 30 seconds to 45 seconds to accredit people. And the time it took from the accreditation to the eventual casting of vote, that is at the end of the voting, when the voter will now drop his or her ballot paper in the ballot box, it took about 2 minutes. And so it was seamless. Most of the
per
polling,
voter.
yes, per voter, seamless. Most of the polling units we went to, we saw that happening. In fact, if they use the thumbprint to do accreditation, the average time to do that was about 1 minute 35 seconds. But when they started using the facial, that was when it came down to about 30 seconds to about 1 minute, for accreditation of voters. And we were quite happy that that happened. Though some of the people didn't go to the polling unit on time. There were issues around the deployment of the ad hoc staff and materials. Even though earlier INEC had deployed from the central bank sensitive and non-sensitive materials to all the sparracks that they had before going out on that day. And so on election day, for instance, around 6:30 a.m. I was trying to move around to get to a super rack. I met security agents at a particular junction. There were so many there. They were just harassing me. Even with all my kids, my ID card, I was trying to tell them at 6:30 the policeman was telling me, you should have gone there since 5 o'clock. Why are you leaving now?
Right, right.
So that was what happened until election. We saw a lot of vote buying going on. In fact, a day before the election, when we went out to send out the people, a lot of people were saying, "No, I'm going to send my vote whether you like it or not." We also had information that the political class were collecting PVCs from people. They will collect it from you and they will assign you to somebody you will meet on election day to collect your PVC to vote. And I grew up in Benin City. I understand the language and I speak it as well. So you go to a polling unit and you're hearing people asking, who am I collecting my PVC from? That was the stage they said to be able to buy votes. So, and then after the election, we got this funny report about, a particular political party had given 2,000 naira to women and market women and all of that. But on the morning of the election, as they were going out to vote, somebody called them, the same people, committee of people who had given her that 2,000, called them to say, "No, don't go there. These people don't give us 15,000. Make una no go there again." And on election day, one of the polling units, I will give you the polling unit number, one of our observers wrote back to say, while election was going on, this particular party agent stood in the middle of the field and just shouted, "If any of you vote for my party, we'll give you 20,000. And there was commotion. And the person was not arrested by the security agents, and they just continued. We also want to, at this time, commend EFCC, because they did arrest a few people, and people were saying, oh, why is it that it's only a few people? EFCC does not have EFCC officials to put in the over 4,000 polling units that they have, but you have police security agents who had people within all of those 4,000.
Police said 35,000 were deployed, and 8,000 others,
extra
soldiers, and
So, and you know, ironically, there was a particular polling unit in the heart of the city I went to. There was not a single security officer. You had about 238 registered voters in that particular polling unit. You had 2 INEC officials, young people, and there was no security in that place. And I'm wondering, I said, okay, you say you have 35,000, including 8,000 others. Where are they? Why didn't you send security officials to protect these young people, knowing the tension, even though we believe that things were not going to escalate to that level? And one other thing that happened, you know, as observers, we are trained like investigators, you know, even though we don't intervene, we just observe. And so you're observing and you see that vote buying is going on. You are walking towards the people just to go and see or what. They see you and they disperse. In that same place where vote buying is going on, a police officer will be passing, will say, Oga, OC, well done, oh, and the OC will say, carry on. You know, you can imagine that politicians now respect observers.
Do you get a sense that there is a normalization of these irregularities? Exactly, because the security agents are not doing their work. And when you ask them, why is it that you see, you can imagine how, even hearing it, then you experiencing it. You as an observer, you see something happening and the party agents disperse. In fact, before you turn your head back, you won't even see anybody. But you are staying far away and you are seeing that same thing happening. You are seeing a security personnel passing by and they're saying, OC, well done. And the OC will say, carry on. Why will the OC not go to arrest those people? Vote buying is an electoral offense. Any crime, whether on election day or even or not election day, is a crime that the police or any security officer should be able to handle. But election issues are treated differently. And when you ask, they say it is the INEC official. That same INEC official that is doing beavers, that is giving ballot paper, that is ensuring that people vote, is the one they are waiting for to come to say, see those people, they are buying, they are selling votes. How will you know? So if we're going to segment the various parties that took part in the election, let's start with the electoral umpire itself. What do you make of INEC's preparedness, their ability to deliver, their ability to conduct the elections technically? You talk about how smooth the process was. Logistics-wise, we understand that there are some pockets of issues there with regards to late delivery and arrival of officials. But overall, what do you make of INEC's performance in conducting the Edo off-cycle governorship election?
Okay, in processes leading to the election and after the election, before the declaration or collation of results, INEC performed perfectly well, excellently, very well, because they kept updating people, and even the fact of deployment of materials, they deployed materials to the places, both sensitive and non-sensitive materials. But the challenge was that if you go, for instance, you go to a Sparak and materials are put there, you will need security to escort the INEC officials and the materials either to the rack or to the polling unit. So early in the morning, everybody is ready. The INEC officials, that's the ad hoc staff, the POs, APOs that are supposed to now carry these materials down to the polling unit, cannot go there if they don't have security escort, if they don't have vehicles to take them. So perhaps within a rack, you have about 10 polling units or 12 polling units. That means you need to provide 12 vehicles that is able to carry the people. And you know, when you talk about 12 polling units, in one center, you may get up to 3 or 4 polling units. Right. That means you need to carry all of them at the same time to that place with the security officer. Yeah. So that was a challenge.
Yeah. Was that a collaboration challenge or gap between INEC and the police, or what did you make of that?
It is a collaboration challenge because it keeps happening. It doesn't happen. It's something we keep seeing in every election, and we thought we had passed that stage. You know that, for instance, when I interviewed those people in that particular polling unit, they said they had to go by themselves. They didn't have security to escort them there. They had to just go so that they'll be able to open polls. I know polls are supposed to open about from 8:30. Some started like 8:55. Some started like 9, 10 because of this kind of challenges that we had. And some of the polling centers, they just set up and the rain started. So that kept away voters also. Some of them were outside without any shade. Some of them in those primary schools, you know, they just stay on the corridor of the primary school. Some of those primary schools are dilapidated. So you come to think about what is the role of a state governor, for instance, that's supposed to keep a public school, you know, ready for such an event. So you have an INEC that needs to buy mattress, buy water, buy generator, buy mats, and keep the place conducive, even as far as building toilets for the ad hoc staff to use. They are supposed to find a ready-made, you know, environment where the state governor or the local government chairman or person, somebody could have made that place available, that you don't need to buy all of this. And I keep saying that on election day, INEC becomes water tanker, water supplier, you know, whatever it is that you have to do. So to that extent is what you have. Then the other extent is on the incremental electoral reforms that we have. Take the beavers, for instance. When the beavers was introduced, people kept talking about the glitches and the problem. But this particular election, we had the beavers that worked perfectly well. But what happened to the results? Because of a Supreme Court judgment that is subsisting, that says that you cannot determine whether there was an overvoting in a polling unit because of the record that you have for the beavers. What you use to determine the overvoting is the number of registered voters. Now, this is the scenario. This is what I feel is the challenge that we have within this electoral process. I went ahead to suggest, you know, digital solutions that everybody said this is the solution that you have. Now, this device will help us address that. Now, on election day, you come to a polling unit A and you have 1,000 registered voters. But on election day, you have that your machine that you have produced to address the issue of overvoting, and the machine tells you that you have 200 accredited voters. But when results are produced, you now see 900. 900. But the paper is telling you that it's only 200 that was accredited. Why did you manufacture that? When the court have said you cannot determine overvoting because of the number you have in the beavers. It is the number of registered voters in the polling unit that helps you to determine.
Was that a critical factor in your view? Because that's what the PDP is claiming. Those ghost votes, those overvotings that civil society organizations like yours have identified. Was it a widespread situation, or were they just isolated incidents?
Yeah, it was. And so the final thing is that it happened in both areas where the APC and the PDP had strongholds. And I keep saying that this every time we have an election, you have an electoral umpire who will sit down and review what has happened and look at ways to improve that. But what do we do? When we issued our statement, we said the political class continues to be the weakest link in our electoral circle and even within for the electoral reforms. You see an electoral political class that go back to sit down to look at where those loopholes are and what they can do the next election. And you see, like for instance, the people who contested this election in Edo State were all members of a particular party. They cross-carpeted to another party. So they just divided themselves like into 50-50, and it's like, okay, let us go there, let the strongest man or the strongest woman win. What you know, I know how to do, and you know how to do it. So let's see whose own will turn out better. And at the end of the day, it is the one that didn't turn out better that will cry the most foul. But importantly, we need to continuously discuss our electoral reforms and get the National Assembly to recognize the use of the beavers and, of course, the IREV. 2020 Edo election, the game changer for 2020 Edo election was actually the IREV. How come now that 2024 we can no longer rely on that IREV that helped us to deliver a free, fair election in 2020?
Yeah, and in talking about the back and forth, the successes, the improvements with the electoral process over the years, was Edo a success story? Considering everything else, I mean, there is no perfect election anywhere. But was it a success story?
Well, Edo was a mixed bag. Though I felt very bad that those things were happening, because I see us putting a lot of resources, human resources and financial resources, and at the end of the day, it's like we have just gone back to square one. The fact that, one, the technology didn't fail us. The people failed. because the results are there. And I think it is also a deliberate act. When you look at the result and you see number of accredited voters, they put the actual number of accredited voters there. Anybody should sit down to see that the numbers that you have were not corresponding with that number of accredited. That's something we should ask. And that's another thing, because at the end of the day, people have voted, politicians have done their thing, we have all done our thing, but the final result is actually the courts that, that delivered that. So it's important that we know there were some things that went well, there were some things that didn't go too well.
Yeah, and in talking about some of those rules, regulations guiding the elections, we have two different incidents where they say the coalition at the local councils were moved to the state capital, at the headquarters of INEC in Edo State for coalition, and the PDP pushed back on that. Talk to me about some of those, outright violation of INEC rules and regulations, because before Sunday's coalition, the governor was there, many of the political actors were there, whether to influence or to address certain concerns. Opinions vary on that particular point. But as far as going by the rule books of INEC, was it followed to the latter in your view? Okay, so part of the guidelines that were not followed is, for instance, when you go to the polling unit, there's a particular place where party agents are supposed to stay, but that was never followed, and even the security agents didn't call their attention to it. Even as observers, we're just supposed to observe and not look at that. But when you go out of that place and you have a conversation with the security agents and say, well, they say no, they cannot do anything, so that they will not, the party agent, I mean, the INEC official had not appointed that to them, that where those people were standing. And then the issue of vote buying also, it is against the rules to buy or sell your vote. We have all of that happening. The fact that one person cannot assist more than 3 persons, except from the PO at the polling unit, to cast their ballot. But you find a situation whereby the party agent is the one assisting people. You say, this is my, one person can be a son to 10 mothers. You say, this is my mother that came, I want to help my mother. Those things are things that shouldn't actually be happening on election day. So those are some of the rules that we have seen that have been flouted. And then, of course, also within the polling unit, security agents are not supposed to bear arms there, but you see some security agents bearing arms. I forgot to mention this particular incident. There was an incident of ballot box snatching, where one of our observers saw that, and unfortunately, the people who came to snatch the ballot and the security agents that were there were not even ready. They were not ready for that. So there were about 7 polling units there. They snatched the first ballot box. The security agents started calling for reinforcement. The other group of people snatched the second ballot box. Before the security agents came with reinforcement, the boys who snatched the ballot box were the ones who started shooting. And then we had to recall our observer from that place. So ballot box snatching is a crime. The interference by party agents is also a crime. Bearing of arms within the polling unit itself is also a crime. Because the regulation says that as soon as you finish election at the polling unit, you need to sort, you need to count and declare results at the polling unit. Some of the people that you have at the polling unit, some of the parties didn't have, apart from APC, PDP, and Labour Party, that we saw mostly agents. We didn't see the other political party agents at the field. Well, and let's talk about how Edo was, like the same old story, because we do know that the next battleground, as you pointed out, is going to be the Nigerian courts. And we anticipate that it's going to be a long battle, because it was a close one. The victory was a close one. Give me a sense of where the rhetoric, the politics, the campaigning, for instance, fed into not just the outcome of the result, but the processes itself, because a lot of people were on the edge of their seats. The governor, before the campaigns, talked about do or die. Mr. Peter Obi, when during the grand finale of the Labour Party, talked about no more glitches. They don't want to hear anything about glitches from INEC. All things considered, what do you make of how the politics of the campaigns feeds into what happens on election day?
Okay, so the Edo election has always been a very interesting one, starting from the time of late Professor Ambrose Ali. And I told you earlier that I grew up there, so that's actually my second home. You know, it used to be Bendel State. I'm from Delta State, so most of my education was there in Edo State, and I followed this politics. There are some gladiators you have that you cannot do away with. For instance, the seat of the Oba of Benin. You know, I remember there was one election that was held, and then people were happy, and the next thing that came out of somebody's mouth is, so what is the temperature in the palace? You know, and I've seen videos where the Oba of Benin has come out dancing and all of that. These are people who, you know, because of the rich culture, the tradition, you cannot do away with the influence of the Oba in an election like this. And now cast your mind back to 2020. In 2020, there was this whole politics about which zone, the issue of rotation. Now, if you notice in Edo Delta, there has been some semblance of rotation. In the three senatorial districts, Edo South, where you have the predominantly Benins, Edo Central, where you have the Esan, and Edo North, where you have the Afemai and Onwa people. You know, Oshomole is from Edo North, and he has been governor for 8 years. Obaseki is from Edo South. He has been governor for 8 years. Remember, Lucky Benedian was governor, and he was also from Edo South. So Edo Central had a case in 2020, and some of the compromises they had was that they were going to zone the 2024 election to Edo Central. And I guess that was why the two dominant political parties had to go to Edo Central to get their candidates. And that's where they the only candidate that was not from Edo Central is the Labour Party candidate. And, you know, because of the tension in the state and the way the electionary happened, I'm telling you, this 2024 election, the campaign was more intensive than any other campaign you would have had that we have seen in the Edo campaign going forward. So some of the type of messaging that you were having was more of war. And, you know, going into that election, the governor and the deputy governor fell out. The deputy governor is from Edo North. That's Philip Shabu is from Edo, the same senatorial district with Adams Oshomole. And of course, you cannot also rule out the crisis within the Labour Party. The chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Abure, is from Edo Central. So these are some of the intrigues and the things that kind of made up the kind of messaging that people had. And if you see their slogans, their slogans were slogans that were more of, you know, not about the people, but about the kind of powers that that were there.
Kind of a personal fight.
Yes, personal fight. We know we have to settle this. It has to be this, you know, and that was what really helped to which it contributed a lot to the apathy. It contributed a lot to the reason why a lot of people didn't turn out for that election. Okay,
we have to go, but in 10 seconds, if you can. We have another election coming up in a matter of months, right? Yes. Ondo State. Does this inspire you to be optimistic about it being better than what we've seen this past Saturday?
Well, the optimism I have is that without an election, there's no democracy. If we all go back and renege on our promises, definitely everything will crumble. I only urge the people themselves, because right now we now need to look up to the people. Right. Don't sell your vote. Ensure that the right thing is done. Ensure that people are held accountable. And then maybe we can begin to get it right. And the National Assembly really need to look at what our laws are saying to help us, you know, salvage what little we have left of our elections.
All right. Faith Nwadishi, as always, thank you so much for giving us your insight and, of course, expert analysis on the Edo governorship election. Thank you most kindly for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you for stopping by. All right. That is our conversation with Faith Nwadishi from the Center for Transparency Advocacy in the aftermath of the keenly contested gubernatorial election in Edo State. That has, of course, divided opinion along the quality of the elections and, of course, the outcome of that said election. Coming up next, we take a look at the fight against insecurity in northwest Nigeria, the politics of it, and the hunt for the most notorious kingpin yet, Bello Turji. More on that after the break.